Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talk Tech with Ted, Kathy, and the U. We originally planned to be on site today to do a video on classroom setup and some of the technology pieces, but as I'm sure you're well aware, we received a lot of snow, so we're going to save that episode for next week. And today we're going to be talking about classroom management in a hybrid learning setting. And before we dive into it, I can't see my background right now. I can just see the presentation, but you can see my background. We have a new feature that's been turned on that I'm going to let Ted talk about because it has to do with what he manages on the back end side of the admin console.
So today, actually, the setting appeared to allow staff, only staff actually, to go in and change your background to one of the non-templates. So if you're inside of Google Meet, you would go in to change your background. You should have a plus button, which is a upload, and you can make your background any background you'd like. So Kathy looks like she's at Lake Michigan on the beach. It's a good place to be. Maybe not right now, but it looks like a good place. So remember that students do not have access to this. So they only have access to the template backgrounds that were available before.
Good to know. All right. So as we're thinking about this transition from remote learning to hybrid, we really need to approach it just as we would when the school year starts in August. So think about some of the activities that you normally do in August, developing classroom norms, going over any classroom jobs that you have. So it's important that we take that approach as we look at entering the hybrid model.
The important part here too is that some of the classroom jobs, and I think we're going to dive into those a little bit later, they're all going to be a little bit different, but mostly the same. It just depends on how you set them up. But your norms are going to look a little different, and we're going to try and give you some ideas that'll kind of make it easier for you to develop those.
Absolutely. So these are some norms to consider developing with your students once we start hybrid. So when you're using Google Meet for whole group lesson time, how do you want to manage microphones being on or off? Are you going to have students use that hand raising option when they have questions? What sort of etiquette do you have in place for using breakout rooms? And then we also want to consider Chromebook etiquette. Now, again, we've all had these devices in our classrooms, but it's going to look a little different, especially for K-5, because now they're bringing these devices to and from school each day. So one of the big things is going to be making sure that students are bringing that device fully charged to school each day, and that there is a procedure in place for those that forget their device or don't charge it. And we're going to dive into that topic a little deeper a few slides later. Procedures for what to do with the device when it's not in use, or maybe if the student's moving throughout the room. And then also, what are we doing with the Chromebook for those students who are in class when they're doing non-digital work? Because I'm certain we're going to have students doing some paper pencil activities when they're in the classroom. And then also really important is reporting damage. So accidents happen with the Chromebooks and damage happens. So what's the procedure in place for reporting that so we can make sure it gets repaired as quickly as possible?
And all of these norms, especially K to 5, they're going to be whole new procedures for teachers and students. And I know at the middle school and the high school, we had an awful lot of loaners that were taken out. I think the benefit is that we don't have, it's less than half of our students that are actually going to be in face-to-face learning. So the amount of loaners will be less. And then hopefully the kids that are coming, they just need to learn that routine of charging and bringing them to school.
All right, Ted, I'm going to let you take this slide, the norms continued, because you developed these ideas here. And I have to give Ted a hard time right now, because as we were working on this, he made a copy of the previous slide just to keep the template the same. And I said, well, you need to find your own meme then to go on this slide. And I thought that he just had the same meme on there, but it's slightly different. So.
Totally true, though. I mean, e-learning is here and it's going to stay. So yes. Some of these are just ideas that you can set up in your class. So my big thing is you always want to try and create a consistent routine to help keep your class flowing. So simple expectations that students know are going to happen first thing when they get there, sometimes the last thing that they do when they leave. So obviously entry tickets, which have been used forever, just can be used for simple attendance. You can do social, emotional, or you can do classwork related. A lot of hybrid learning environments tend to use this for SEL purposes, basically like a how are you doing check-in. And it also can help, obviously, because you can do attendance with it too. The other thing is whole group discussion time. You are going to be working with 2 groups at the same time, trying to allow for that opportunity for all of your students to be able to communicate back and forth. It's not necessary all the time, but allowing that discussion time with both groups is definitely helpful. Exit tickets, obviously, can be used for reflection or even to collect data for understanding of a lesson. So exit tickets, so many different versions of them, but the whole idea there is that, again, you get a little bit of attendance data, but also you can get SEL components out of that as well. This is a big one as you're transitioning to this. I think a lot of teachers are going to be tempted to go back to paper pencil for some of the assignments. You should try your best to keep all work done the same for both groups, whether they're in-face or remote students. And the reason is that you may have a couple students that maybe are in class one day, but they might not be the next day. So having the same assignments for both groups will truly help out. That way you're not missing anything. And then the last thing is group work. We talked about this, the blended lessons. They definitely will help create a consistent flow and expectation for students. So if you have the opportunity or the time to pre-record a lesson or a video, having that as a back pocket thing to push out to your remote students is always going to be helpful for that.
Absolutely. So now we're going to get into some class jobs that are a little more specific to hybrid learning as opposed to just your run-of-the-mill class jobs. So first is you can have a designated meeting greeter, and of course this can rotate each week or even each day. And maybe they start each meeting with a greeting, a joke, or a show and tell. Ted, I had to laugh when I was putting this together because my dad is a member of the local Lions Club, and they actually have a position within their club. It's called the tail twister, and that person's job is to start each meeting with a joke.
I mean, it's useful. I mean, it's the hook, basically. You got to get everybody's attention somehow. So, and the student that you pick for this will normally be ecstatic about doing it. So it's definitely a good way to get everybody engaged right away.
Absolutely. You can also have a timekeeper. So if you have time limits for different activities that you're doing, having a student monitor that. And it could be as simple as having the student Google stopwatch and opening a stopwatch or a timer on their computer so they can set that time. Also having a chat moderator. And in last week's episode, we talked about some different ideas or models for hybrid where maybe there's a staff member if you do have an extra staff member. But this is a great job for a student if you don't have that paraprofessional or co-teacher. And that student just keeps an eye on the chat and alerts the teacher if there are any questions that they need to address. The attendance clerk, so that student would just take note of whoever's absent when you're starting class, starting that Google Meet, and then just reporting those absent names to the teacher so they can go in and quickly take attendance. And again, just another sidebar here. One of my teaching partners from many years ago was notorious for forgetting to take attendance, and the office would have to call down to the classroom multiple times a day. So this is helpful if you're one of those people that you get caught up starting class, have a student serve as your attendance clerk. And then finally here, your brain break leader. So again, referencing our last episode, we talked about the importance of chunking your lessons and having that, that instructional time, that 10-to-2 ratio, but then giving that time for students to digest, to discuss. So scheduling those breaks throughout your lessons, and then again, just having a student who knows, hey, 10:30 is our brain break, and they let the teacher know.
And looking at these, I mean, it definitely lends itself towards elementary because that's usually where you see those class roles. But in a hybrid setting, this is K to 12. And the reason is that all of these positions are going to help you be more effective in front of your class when you're teaching to take away some of those responsibilities. So don't think that this is not for middle school or high school. The chat moderator is probably going to be your best friend when you are teaching if you're by yourself. Timekeeper, if someone, if they need a little bit of help with that time and make sure you're on track, that's also really cool. So again, be open to it. You definitely don't have to use these by any means, but it is a good way to get your whole class involved and create a really cool, unique learning environment.
All right. And I had to dedicate a slide here to loaner Chromebooks because this is going to be a new concept for our elementary buildings. Our middle school and high school had this process in place previously, so that won't be new to them. But you're going to find that students are going to forget their Chromebook at home. It's going to come not fully charged. So we have a system in place that we've gone over with the principals and kind of given them the leeway to design it to meet the needs of each specific building. But basically, each building is going to have a cart that's designated for loaner Chromebooks. And there's going to be a time and a location where students will need to go, usually right at the start of the day, if they need to check out a loaner device. Now, students that have a damaged Chromebook, they'll be given a loaner device, but that device can be taken home until their device is repaired and returned to them. The students that are they forget it or it's not charged, those loaners get turned in at the end of the day, every single day. So it's very important, again, especially for K-5, because this is a brand new concept for them, that we are encouraging and rewarding those students who are bringing their charged device to school each day. At the middle school last year, I worked with the PBIS team, and we did several challenges throughout the year to help boost this and improve how many kids were bringing those charged devices each day. And again, I have the mentality of a middle school teacher. So I would get on the announcements and I would play the song, "I've got the power." And then that was when the teachers would go and check students' devices and then reward them with whatever system they were using. So I can't stress this enough, how important this is going to be, and to really, really stick to this to get students in the habit and in the routine.
And I mean, the one benefit that we have in this situation is, well, there's two. There's less students in each building, so there's probably going to be less loaners, hopefully. And the other part is that students have been using their devices for all of their work for the past almost a year. So the Chromebook itself is an absolutely integral part of their learning. So hopefully forgetting it won't be as problematic as it was before.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of device care, when students were issued their Chromebooks in August, they got a zip-up case for it. So we want to make sure that when they're bringing those devices to and from school, that they're not just throwing it in the backpack and that they're using those cases to help protect it. And then all of the devices right now are labeled with what's called an asset tag. It just looks like a barcode. And that's how we recorded who got what device when we distributed them. But I would recommend just using mailing labels and putting the student's first and last name on there. Because again, it can be very easy for a kid to pick up someone else's Chromebook by accident. So if they're labeled, it's really easy to return it to its owner. Whenever the devices are not being used in the classroom, you want to make sure that you're closing those lids. When they're left open, when the devices are not in use, that's when we end up with cracked screens. And then along with that, we don't want students putting pens or pencils on the keyboard, because again, somebody can just close a lid very quickly and that cracks the screen. If and when there's any movement happening throughout the classroom for, socially distant group work, make sure that the lid is closed and they're carrying the device with 2 hands so that we don't drop it. In terms of cleaning, you can use the Clorox wipes. You just don't want to soak the device, so just be careful when you're using those. And then in terms of troubleshooting, I know we've mentioned this before, but I just mention this. Always try restarting. So if somebody's video isn't working, their audio is not working, before you pick up the phone and call the help desk, restart the device. What is it? 90% of issues are fixed by restarting.
At least, yeah.
So just remember that as we transition back to the buildings, because things are going to happen. I mean, things happen every day now with Chromebooks, and a lot of times that restart works wonders.
Yeah. And just a couple things to add to the device care is that if students are going to be moving, which I doubt that there's going to be a lot of movement between classes now, because I think they're going to be dedicated to spaces mostly. But even if they're going around the room, have them shut the device, because that's the biggest thing. Is I've seen a lot of students leave the device open, and I'm guilty of it myself, is shut the device. They start back up in less than 10 seconds, so they're not going to lose any time if they shut it. The screens are all mostly for every grade level except one are glass screens now, so they should be touchscreen. That's the biggest thing, is that we don't want those to drop, because they will break, they will crack. So if you see students walk around with one hand on it, just politely ask them two hands. That way they hug it, especially in the lower grade levels, K to 2. I always say hug your Chromebook when you walk around. So
that's good advice. All right, well, that's all we have for this episode. This one's a little bit shorter and sweeter, but still a lot of important content in there. Next week, as long as we don't get another 10 inches of snow, Ted and I will be on site to record an episode focusing on classroom setup, technology setup, all of that good stuff. But again, we are here. We've already gotten a lot of really good questions since we've started these hybrid episodes, so we appreciate that. It helps us stay on top of things and also, think of material that we can cover to help teachers. So please keep the questions coming. So I think that's all we got, Ted.
that's all I got.
Until next Tuesday. And hey, don't forget, next Tuesday, what are we wearing, Ted?
Our OTL t-shirts.
Matching shirts. Can't wait.
Oh, matching shirts. Could be any shirt, right?
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.